How does a modern navy lose a war against a country with no navy? That's a question that Russian admirals will be asking for decades because despite having no surface combat ships, Ukraine is dismantling the Russian Black Sea Fleet. On October 29, 2022, a mini-drone swarm launched an attack on the Russian naval base at Sevastopol. Information about the attack is quite scarce, and as usual, Ukraine is remaining extremely tight-lipped about an attack that it obviously carried out itself. However, what's even stranger is just how tight-lipped the US is also remaining about the incident, when in the past the US has publicly touted the effectiveness of weapons it sent to Ukraine. It's difficult to separate fact from fiction when trying to figure out exactly what happened. And with the US and Ukraine both keeping quiet, we have only the Russian Ministry of Defense to rely on for information. According to the Russian MOD, the explosions filmed at Sevastopol were the result of new naval variant of Russian cigarettes, similar to the same cigarettes responsible for the multiple explosions at the Crimean airbase of Saki, which definitely didn't destroy multiple aircraft and seriously damage many others. The naval cigarette variant responsible for the Sevastopol explosions was no doubt the same responsible for the sinking of the Moskva. This is what the West doesn't want you to know. NATO envies superior Russian cigarette technology. Fine, the real report from the Russian Ministry of Defense doesn't state that cigarettes caused the explosion filmed in the early hours of October 29th, but their explanation is just as ridiculous. According to Russian sources, an attack by 7 unmanned submerged vehicles and an indeterminate number of airborne drones was successfully repelled, resulting in only light damage to one landing craft. However, despite Ukraine remaining silent on the operation, it was quick to bring the receipts, and we can verify from footage filmed by the drones themselves that at least 3 ships were struck in the attack, along with 1 crane. Piecing together the attack is going to be impossible until someone more credible than the Russian Ministry of Defense comes forward with details, but for now we can at least try to put together some of the clues and ultimately try to understand what happened. What we do know is that the attack did indeed take place via sea and air simultaneously, using drones. We have one video of air defenses sending missiles up to meet the airborne threat, and it appears as if the airborne attack was largely successfully repelled, or at least we have no verification of strikes against Russian targets by airborne drones. But that doesn't mean that those attacks were unsuccessful. We also have verification of at least 3 Russian ships taking direct hits from suicide drones, including the famed Admiral Makarov. The Makarov is the only Grigorovich-class frigate currently in the area, and the ship's class has been confirmed by open-source intelligence. The minesweeper, the Ivan Gulabes, has been confirmed as a likely target, with the Russian Ministry of Defense admitting that at least the Gulabes had indeed suffered quote-unquote minor damage. This likely means that the ship has been sent straight to dry dock for very extensive repairs, if not sunk altogether. We can see from the footage that the ship took a suicide drone straight to the stern, which would have caused serious damage to its propulsion, though not necessarily sunk it. The Admiral Makarov, however, the new and possibly now former flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, seems to have taken a blow toward the rear of the ship, near where the launch cells for the Caliber cruise missiles are located. With the Russian Black Sea Fleet using both submarines and surface ships to launch cruise missile attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure, this was likely the intended target, as the drones do not appear to have packed enough firepower to actually sink a large frigate. This likely has led to a mission kill for the Admiral Makarov, though given what we've learned of Russian engineering, the Makarov may have the not-so-rare privilege of becoming Russia's latest submarine, having been retired from surface combat by Ukraine. As details of the attack pour in, some conclusions become immediately obvious. First, this is an attack of historical significance, as it marks the rare occurrence of a superior navy being ambushed on its own port. The fact that Ukraine carried out this attack via drones makes this the first such attack in history and a turning point in naval warfare. Another conclusion is that Russia was, perhaps unsurprisingly, caught with its pants down for what must be the umpteenth time this war. We know this because the first recorded explosions from successful drone strikes occurred just after 4 a.m., but it's the location of the attack that is the most stunning of all. Volunteers using open-source intelligence have confirmed that the sea portion of the attack took place inside of Sevastopol Bay, which is supposed to be protected against intrusion by enemy surface or submersible ships. Indeed, multiple Russian military bloggers have expressed outrage that the security netting meant to stop such an attack was either not in use or easily defeated by Ukraine's drones. It wasn't until the second wave of the attack that the Russian forces began to intercept the incoming drones using helicopters, smaller surface vessels, and even artillery. It appears that at least one drone in the second wave was in fact successfully intercepted, as the video of the attack cuts out just before the drone reaches its intended target. We can also see in this video how a Russian helicopter is desperately trying to blow the drone out of the water using its cannon. So, was this attack successful? And why couldn't Russia stop it? Even if no ship was sunk, it's clear that at least 3 ships suffered serious damage. It's likely that all 3 suffered what the US Navy calls mission kills, or damage sufficient enough to force a ship out of the fight, relegating it to dry dock for repairs that could take days to months to complete. Knocking 2 surface combat vessels out of the fight, which Russia is using to launch cruise missiles against Ukraine, is a major win for a smaller nation. But the real victory comes from the possibility of having caused damage to any of the ship's more sensitive high-tech systems. Under the most intense sanctions from the modern era, Russia is very poorly prepared to replace high-tech systems or even conduct repairs on them. It's rumored that part of the reason why the Moskva was apparently so easily sunk is that some of its air defense systems were not fully operational due to a shortage of parts. Victory also comes in the form of cost analysis. For the price of a few $100,000, Ukraine has certainly managed to cause tens of millions of dollars worth of damage. That's the type of economic exchange between combatants that wins wars, and given the fact that the United States and other NATO partners have been supplying Ukraine with its naval drones since April, this almost certainly is not the last drone attack the Russian fleet is going to be going up against. So why was the attack so effective? It's popular to rag on the Russian military as being incompetent and ineffective, and that's partly because the Russian military has in fact proven to be incompetent and ineffective. It's better suited for causing civilian casualties in Grozny and Aleppo than waging a modern war against a Western-backed power. However, the fact of the matter is that even modern Western militaries might have found themselves very hard-pressed to defend themselves from a similar attack. It's unknown what aerial drones Ukraine used in the attack, but what we do know is that current air defenses in Ukraine are having trouble spotting Iranian-made suicide drones at long distances. That's because these drones are small and made of materials that don't give off strong radar returns, dramatically shortening the range at which they can be not just identified but targeted. While contacts can be identified at long range, getting a weapons-quality track on a low observable craft typically only happens at very short distances. The partially submerged drones used in the sea attack are also very difficult to spot on radar. These craft sit partially submerged and under the water, presenting very little surface areas above the waves to bounce radar waves back with. This doesn't just complicate detection, but targeting by long-range defenses. We have evidence of how difficult these drones were to target from the fact that the target ship in the daytime attack video was busying itself with evasive actions, while destroying the drones was up to the circling helicopter above. The United States recognized the difficulty in defending large surface vessels from smaller attack boats back in the early 2000s, when it launched a war game between friendly forces and those of an unnamed hostile nation completely believed to represent Iran. The commander in charge of this enemy nation knew that he couldn't stand up to the power of a U.S. carrier strike group with his own surface combatants, so instead he chose to attack the mighty U.S. carrier with a swarm of small, fast attack boats. The result was the sinking of the American carrier. The U.S. Navy took the lesson to heart and immediately began to research ways of using existing CIWS systems to target small surface targets. However, the development of naval lasers is the U.S.'s response to the surface drone threat. But as it stands, even the mighty U.S. Navy is incredibly vulnerable to the same type of attack that just rocked the Russian Black Sea Fleet to its core. Now go check out why Russia can't stop U.S. weapons, or click this other video instead.